I'm still in Newcastle. Not snowing today, thank God. This is the 7th video on China and why I left China after 7 months. I've done a video recently about why I left Thailand after 10 years living in Chiang Mai, but this is why I left China after only 7 months. Doesn't sound like a long time, but it felt like a year to me. Yeah, and there were a few reasons. I mean, I mentioned in one of the first videos I made on China about how I'd met a guy in Guangzhou who said don't get stuck teaching here, and I met a lot of teachers while I was there who were teaching and hadn't progressed. They'd been there a long time and they hadn't progressed. In 7 months I did everything to do in Chengdu. Did all the nightlife, which is something you do. Got to study Chinese. When I had holidays, I went out to visit the Holy Mountain, a couple of hours outside Chengdu, maybe actually 4 hours. I went to a town near Tibet one weekend. I went to the biggest Buddha in the world. I did all the stuff basically there was to do around Chengdu, like I did in Chiang Mai. I did all the stuff to do around Chiang Mai. And what happened was, and the crunch point for me was, I was on this 6-month contract and it got to the summer and they promised me work. They said, we'll get you work for the summer. And I was like, fine. I said, before I do that, my sister's coming over to visit me, so I'd like to take her on a tour of China for a month, and then when I come back I'll do some work, because it's like a 3-month break for the summer, unpaid, no pay at all, but I'd save some money by living very frugally. So I basically went up to Beijing, picked my sister up, took her to Xi'an, and then back to Chengdu, and we did, like, maybe it was 3 weeks actually, not a month, it was 3 weeks together. Got back to Chengdu, went to my school, which was closed, but never closed for the Chinese teachers, because they had to be there all the time, even when it was closed, like making new materials or lesson plans or whatever during the 3-month break in the summer. And I said, so where's the work? Silence, deadly silence, like. And I went to speak to the deputy head and the head and said, look, you said you were going to get me work for the summer, because basically I'm not being paid anything now for 3 months, so I need some work to tide me over. And I got nothing out of them, and I went back to my apartment, back to my thinking, and I basically thought, well, it looks like they haven't got anything set up for me. And I was a bit annoyed about a couple of things at the time. One was I looked at buying a cheap apartment in China, and found out that basically I wasn't eligible to get a loan from a Chinese bank to do that. They were 15 grand, like between 15 and 20 grand for a studio apartment in a really great central location in the city. I was like, yeah, I can do this. And then I was like, well, actually I can't, because I can't get a loan from the Chinese banks, and I don't have the cash, and I'm never going to save it up. I can remember going to the roof of my school and working all this out, like a blue sky. It was summer, about April. It got really hot, and I was stood on the roof of our school looking out over the city, and I was like, God, I'd love to live here for the rest of my life, but if I can't buy a property, then that's not great. And another thing, the second thing, was that they basically 1 week sent me out to Dujianyan, famous for an irrigation system in China. Basically sent me out there to do promos for their other school, which was the first international school, I think, in the whole of China. So I was there, based there for a week, staying on campus, on this campus of this international school. But what they were doing was sending me to friends of the owner of the school, sending me to his schools during this week to basically promote kindergartens and cram schools and show there was a white face there. And I got really annoyed by it, because I was like, look, why have you sent me here? I've got a contract to teach in Chengdu at the kindergarten, but why have you sent me here to do this? And basically I'd turn up in the morning at like, I picked up, ironically, this is funny, in a limousine. They picked me up in a limousine, and they, like a huge black, I think it was a Lincoln, like one of those American cars. I get picked up in that car with a couple of young kids who were, I think, the sons and daughters of the owner of the school. Get driven into Dujianyan, which was about 5 kilometers away, and then just get dumped in this kindergarten or this cram school, and then made to make a show of what an English teacher could provide in Dujianyan, and then get a load of photos taken and everything. But they basically dumped me in classrooms and said, teach. I was like, what do you want me to teach? I've got no plan, I've got no syllabus, I've got no idea what you want me to do. And they were just like, do it. I was like, well, fine. So I did it. So I'd done that. I remember the weekend they picked me up for that job to go out there for a week. The driver, there was some kind of a hitch, and he drove me for an hour out of Chengdu towards Dujianyan, turned around, drove all the way back to the school, another hour, and then drove, because he'd forgotten something basically, and then drove us all the way back out to Dujianyan, which was about 2 hours outside Chengdu. I was okay because I had my laptop. I remember I was writing some essays on that laptop at the time. I remember I was spending that week in Dujianyan in this private school. If you look it up, it's called Guangyao School in Dujianyan, and you can see photos of the campus. And it's like campus just outside the city. It's beautiful, really nice. Like there's little timber chalets where the teachers stay. There's a Japanese like martial arts centre. There's a swimming pool that had no water at the time. I was reading The Life of Pi. I was going for runs, and one of the two Simons who I mentioned in my other videos, the senior one that had done the motorbike tour around China, he'd been sent there as well to basically do the same as me, go out and promo schools. And anyway, so what happened was, I was basically, like I said, I met my sister in Beijing. I gave her a 1-week tour of Beijing, took her to Xi'an for a few days. She got robbed. That wasn't great. But I got to show her the terracotta warriors, and then we went to Chengdu, and she met like all my friends. We went out on nights out. We did cupping, that Chinese system where they put cups of hot steam on your back and stuff. I had a really good time, but got to the end of that 3 weeks, and that was July now. I've been there since January, and I was basically facing the prospect of 2 months without work. I basically spent pretty much all I'd saved by living very frugally off my Chinese salary during that time. I was just like, well, they haven't kept their end of the bargain up. They said they were going to get me work for the summer. They haven't. They're not planning to, well, from what I can see. So basically I can stay here, teach another semester, and by that time I'd done everything there was to do in Chengdu. It's a big city and the surrounding areas are beautiful, but I'd already seen all of that. And I was like, stick or twist, and I was like, I'm going to twist. I didn't tell them anything because they've been holding over me the fact that, look, we're paying you rent over the summer. Fair enough, they were paying for my apartment, as was in the contract. Basically they had no intention to give me work, which meant I'd have to finance 2 months with unpaid work and then go back to the teaching. I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna go. And I'm not going to tell anyone, because if I do it might create some problems for me. I went to Dave's Oasis, to Dave's bar, and I got Dave to book me a plane ticket to Hong Kong. I bought him a bottle of Jack Daniels to say thank you, and I went. I remember that flight, I was reading a magazine about some entrepreneur in Hong Kong who'd done property, and I was thinking, God, I need to do something like that. And I went basically to Hong Kong, and I stayed in Hong Kong for a week, met a friend from my teaching course in Newcastle, where I'd qualified to be a teacher for English as a second language, and then bang, I just blew out. I left. No regrets about that at all. Went back to England after a great week in Hong Kong, going out to islands, meeting the person, I was going to say a friend, but she was more of someone I just knew. We didn't get on very well. It was funny, man. We went over to Hong Kong Island, where all the bankers go, to like the pubs and bars, and like in China I was getting a beer for like, I don't know, it was like 50p or something for a big bottle. In Hong Kong I was paying like 6 or 8 quid for a beer in this bar with this girl, and we had nothing to talk about. She lived in London, she was like a bit pretentious, and I was bored out of my mind. So anyway, that all finished and I flew back to England. That's where I'll leave this, and that was what set me off a month later back to Asia, but to Thailand. Went back to England for like a week and I hated it. Sorry, for 4 weeks, and I hated it. And I hatched a plan to go back to Asia, and ended up in Thailand. So until next time, this is now.